This is CES Tech Talk. I'm James Kotecki, bringing you an interview that I recorded live at the C-Space studio at CES 2023. Enjoy. Hey, welcome back. You're in the C-Space studio with me, James Kotecki, here at CES 2023. And joining us is Yusuf Chuku, who is of NBC Universal. And I'm going to read your title, the Executive Vice President, Client Strategy and Insights. And I'm sure you've got a lot of great insights for us right now. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What is the scope of your role at NBC Universal? How do you define what you do to someone you just met?
By spending about 2 hours trying to explain it. But very simply, I run two teams, a team called Client Strategy and a team called Insights and Research. Together they are 55, 56 strategists, researchers, data scientists, analysts, all of whom are really just focused on ensuring that our clients that advertise with us kind of have effective advertising. It's as simple as that.
So what are some data points and trends that stand out to you at the beginning of 2023?
Oh gosh, well I think 2023 is going to be interesting in terms of where things are going. I'm really excited about in-game advertising. Yeah. I think that is I don't want to say it's going to be big because that just makes me seem like some kind of like pop culture person. But I do think that in terms of finding engaged audiences, a lot of it still remains kind of untapped. There's still so much opportunity. So I still feel that that's going to be huge. I think we're seeing it already, but advertising in streaming across different streaming platforms is going to continue to increase. And so yeah, it's going to be interesting.
What's the gaming play for NBC Universal? So I think of NBC, the channels, the television channels. I think of movies. I think of theme parks with Universal. I think about Peacock, the streaming service that you have. But what's the gaming play?
There's going to be some news coming, so I'm not going to sort of preempt some of that.
We love exclusives here at the C-Space studio.
I certainly won't be doing that yet. But it's probably the best way to think about it is you have NBC Universal, but also you have NBC Universal advertising and partnerships. And so what we do as a team is we sell across numerous platforms. And so if you think about wherever our content appears, whether that be on social platforms, on YouTube, Twitter, like the opportunity for you to attach advertising to it via NBCU one platform is kind of where we sit. And so in-game advertising will be yet another opportunity that we are offering to our advertisers.
Can we talk about Peacock for a little bit?
Sure.
The streaming service that, I don't know, was it a couple of years ago that actually launched? That, I believe, has had an ad-supported tier from the beginning.
Yeah.
Now we see other streaming services starting to add ad-supported tiers. What lessons have you learned? I mean, I don't want you to give everything away to your competitors, but in general, what have you learned throughout this process in terms of what advertising has done?
I think it's probably the advertising gets a bad rap. Like people will tell you that people don't like advertising. There was
not here in the C-Space studio.
Exactly. Well, I tell you a story. A number of years ago, when my daughter was a little younger, a friend of hers found out I worked in advertising. And what she said to my daughter was, "Oh, advertising, isn't that what poor people watch?" And that's a horribly precocious thing to say for a child. But what she was getting at is she lived in a world where she was able to pay to not see it. And so the idea that lots of people are willing to pay to not see advertising was a belief that I think the industry held on to for a while, and it drove kind of the launch of various platforms. I think what we have discovered is that, and I guess the dirty secret is that people love brands and they like advertising when advertising is done well. What we have tried to do at NBC Universal with Peacock is create an advertising environment that is right, and so you ensure that you create pods that don't have many ads. You kind of create these sort of prime pods that allow us kind of like one or two ads that just mean that actually the people can engage in it and get straight to the content. You ensure that you are providing premium content that right. creates high emotional engagement, and that becomes a great place for advertising. So there are sort of, I guess, simple things that we've kind of known as an industry, we just forget sometimes, and that's really what's been the secret of success.
Does it come down to the creative side as well? I mean, I can rattle off probably 10 amazing commercials that still stick with me today. If I think about Nike commercials or Apple commercials, some that I'll literally go to YouTube and just like search for the commercial. So it's clearly possible for this stuff to tug on our heartstrings. But how do you think about the creative side of this?
It's interesting as an industry. Like once a year, when the Super Bowl comes, we suddenly decide that actually we should make engaging, entertaining advertising, and then what happens is a whole load of people are probably even more engaged in the ad break than they are the football.
Right.
And then it finishes, and then we forget, and then we go back to how we used to be. I think Phil. Actually, one thing that was told to me when I first started the industry by another senior creative, and he was like, Yusuf, consumers invite us into their homes every evening, and so what we should be is great guests, and a great guest is warm. They'll tell you great stories. They'll entertain and engage you. And so, like, the best advertising does that, and when you do, people welcome you into their lives.
And being a part of NBC Universal must have its advantages there, because obviously there's a storytelling DNA as part of the organization.
Oh, absolutely. I spent my entire career, over a quarter of a century, background. I used to work in advertising as a creative strategist in advertising agencies, and so spent a lot of my time talking to clients around how we can help them kind of impact culture, how we can find a place for them within popular culture, and how they kind of needed to tell stories that were culturally relevant. Fast forward to now, I sit in an organization that does that every single minute of every single day, and so I am learning from probably the greatest storytellers in the industry on how to attract an audience, and it's some of those learnings that we're passing on to clients.
It strikes me that in a world of many people cutting the cord and living an on-demand lifestyle of only selecting the content that they would already want to watch, or that the algorithm has really predetermined for them to watch, advertising may be some of the only content that I didn't explicitly choose to watch. So in certain situations, is there kind of this element, you're kind of alluding to this element of almost mission, where in certain situations there are messages or ideas that maybe would actually be good for people and improve their lives. They would never seek it out, they would never see it any other way, and advertising actually is the only way to communicate that.
Yes, there's. I'm not going to. It's probably a bad example in terms of the content, but it helps understand where advertising came from. If you think of, there were a thing called medicine shows, like hundreds of years ago, and traveling snake oil salesmen would enter a town, and they would literally put on a show.
We're talking about like the covered wagon.
Exactly.
Doctor medicine.
And for these towns that people didn't visit very often, suddenly to have this entertainer in town, they would draw on an audience, and then once they had that engaged audience, they would sell whatever they were selling. That is advertising from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but the kind of the lessons kind of remain today. And so as long as we are, and I've said it before, but I kind of say it a million times, as long as we are engaging, entertaining, and informative, like, people will listen and take on the messaging that they need.
What else inspires you beyond your industry to innovate and to do what you do?
I moved into a new building downtown Manhattan last year, and I was getting out of the elevator, and I bumped into basically a childhood hero. His name is Mark Gonzalez. He lives in my building. He's a skater, and he's credited as being kind of the father of modern day street skating. And so what he and a whole generation of early street skaters did is, when they looked at their built environment, when they looked at a set of stairs or a wall or a handrail, they saw something that they could do tricks on. Like, other people walked on it, they would jump over it, they would grind it, whatever it is. But it was how they worked with what was not a skate park. This was a limited street environment, but yet somehow they turned it into a playground. There's an Orson Welles quote that I'll probably butcher now, because I'm now trying to remember it. But I think he said the enemy of art is the absence of limitations. And so what he meant by that is that we need constraints in order to innovate.
Shakespeare wrote sonnets within a very particular framework.
Exactly, right? And so what's interesting for me and where I draw inspiration is that actually the constraints that maybe we sometimes think of as kind of these limitations, the things that get in the way of creativity and innovation. It's like, well, no, actually embrace that, because that's actually where the innovation is going to come from.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface in this conversation, and I really appreciate you coming, and I'm sorry we can't keep going, but we hope to have you back here in the C-Space studio. Yusuf Chuku, NBC Universal. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that live conversation from CES 2023. Look up the CES C-Space studio for more conversations like that, and get even more CES at ces.tech. That's ces.tech. And of course, please subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a moment. I'm James Kotecki, talking tech on CES Tech Talk.